and talk to people there. I was supposed to have an interview, and then I was also supposed to be at home to take care of my dog. So that was not actually a meeting, but that was a responsibility I had. Yeah.
So triple booked, and you didn't cancel, so you navigated it.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was an interview, dog care, so to speak, and what?
Yeah, and then the event, like an event about the society of tomorrow and about AI in public sector. So yeah, but I managed to.
But maybe that's the core thing. When you're an entrepreneur, is it more about juggling and navigating than actually being able to cancel things?
Yeah, I think that the successful people manage to like shape the role as the company grows. So I think now I'm in a position where I probably should like say no to things and manage things a little bit better, like manage my calendar a little bit better. But I think I've grown, I've managed to pretty well mold myself throughout all the years, like from being 2 people to being 30 people. I mean, it's a constant molding of the role. And I think that's hopefully how the next 5 years looks as well.
But this is a very interesting topic. I mean, like I'm sure you've heard that sort of conversation. Steve Jobs was famous for having a really high signal to noise ratio. And we talk about, he probably had 80%. All his work, all hours he spent was 80% signal. So he was quite brutal with what he was cancelling out as noise. And then now they say the one that beats him, it probably has some Asperger and stuff like that. Elon Musk is famous for having almost 100% signal ratio, which means he's not a functioning social being, probably. But is that the truth also to be really, I mean, like, because you are juggling is not really the same as 100% signal.
No.
So what's the way here?
I mean, that's a good question. I think the question is like, how do you find signal, or how do you prioritize? And I think that's actually analogous to our biggest challenge as a company for Intric. I've said it throughout the years, is that knowing like what to prioritize. It doesn't sound like a game changer, but in the age of AI, like there's so many balls. I say it in Swedish, like choosing which balls we run on. Like there's so many things you could be doing with AI. Yeah. So, and that comes in from all angles. It's ideas from customers. It's ideas that we ourselves have. It's things you read on the news. It's things that your parents tell you, or your relatives, or your peers in the industry. So you can do so many things, and that's the struggle, like choosing what you build and what you build for.
But then it's 2 questions. It's like really picking out what you believe. Your belief is in signal. Yeah. What's your real signal, as in all the things that potentially could be signal, but turns out to be noise. And then brutal focus to stay with that signal and not jump around. Yeah. 2 different challenges. Yeah. Actually 2 different personality traits even.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Do you have a way to just prioritize your everyday calendar? Get things done, so to speak.
Yeah, I think I do it in a pretty like structured way. I mean, every day I pick things that 3 things that I need to get done, like no matter what. I do it on the train on my way into the office.
Is that the Tim Ferriss way?
Sorry?
Tim Ferriss, the 4-hour work week.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that.
But start with the vital ones.
Yeah, probably like that.
And then you feel good.
Yeah. And I also try to think of tasks as like urgent but important, urgent but not important, not important but urgent, and then not
That's
important,
Stephen
not urgent.
Covey.
Yeah, exactly.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. So that one I put things in those squares, and then every day you pick 3 things from the the important and urgent thing, and that's worked pretty well. I've done it for like 2 years. Works pretty well.
But that's pretty structured. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
How do you do it, Anders?
Well, I follow the weighted shortest job first kind of approach.
All right.
I mean, it's you always have these kind of long-term tasks that you have to do, but then you have also short-term tasks, and I try to make sure that during the day you actually spend some time on short-term tasks. It can be anything from answering some emails or whatnot. So I do them usually first and ensure that I actually make them the short tasks first, and then I have some tasks or more long-term per day. So the mix and balance between short-term and long-term is the major thing that I try to do.
And is that back to the getting things done framework?
Yes.
So we have three major frameworks here that is playing into it. There's getting things done. I can't remember who wrote that book. So it was a book called
Henrik, or what's your preferred way to organize your day?
Do what I'm passionate and have fun with.
That sounds nice. I hope to get there one day.
No, I'm terrible.
I'm kidding.
I have tried all the different. I mean, getting things done. Try that. Tried Stephen Covey's 7 Habits and taught it to coached it and stuff like that even. And then what was the last one? The top 3 things per day.
Yeah.
I think if it's anything I'm adhering to is the logic of Tim Ferriss, the 4-hour work week. So it's fundamentally the 80-20 rule, and it's fundamentally about signal. So trying to suss out what is signal, and basically not thinking about the big to-do list, but basically what items on the list if you've done that, is that the one that makes the biggest difference for tomorrow? And is that the one that makes you feel that you had a productive day? So that is kind of, I think I'm leaning into the top 3 agenda most. The other ones I have a hard time with my discipline, simply to stay on course so I'm more principle based than structure based. I'm pretty bad.
Yeah, well, self-discipline is a good thing, but
it's
hard,
a
hard thing to do.
Hard thing.
Well, with that, very welcome here, David Wallén.
Thank you.
CEO and founder of Intric.
Co-founder, yeah.
Co-founder of Intric. But really looking forward to hear more about what Intric is doing and how we can also help the public sector
navigate innovation.
And also become more agentic in one way or form. And before we go there, perhaps you can just give us a quick introduction to who is really David? What's your background and how did you end up at Intric?
Sure. The short version is I got introduced to programming thanks to computer games, like I think many of us. And I was also always actually interested in hardware as well. So that's also thanks to computer games. I needed a graphics card for my computer to play a certain game, and then I had to figure out how to get one and make it work. So that led me into technology. And I've always been a builder. Like after high school or university, I programmed for Ericsson. And then my parents, who are academics, they are thought that it's probably a good idea to do that, get a seal of approval on this like knowledge that you think you have. So I did that. I started robotics in KTH. And that was partly for my love of hardware. It was really tough. Like it was one of the toughest decisions I've ever made, choosing between computer science and like mechanical engineering, which could lead me to robotics. So I think.
Did you do the RoboCup thing as well? Or?
No. What's that?
The football playing robots.
No, I didn't. Okay. I didn't get time to that. But maybe one day. But I think that we could have, in hindsight, Intric could have been maybe happened a bit sooner if I choose computer science, maybe. But I think I believe somehow in that you find your own way. And like with robotics, I was part of starting up another company while it was a robotics/design studio while I was studying. And then, robotics, like at the end of university, I took the first course in machine learning. And then I was really like, that blew my mind. This was 2018. And I was like, holy shit. Sorry for the language, that was like, this is the only thing you can work on as an engineer in the 21st century. So I was like, no more 1,000 if statements. Like, this is how you really build smart systems. And so I knew I had to do something with AI, and I was just not sure about like what. And I started experimenting with language models. In the other company, we got access to OpenAI's early models, and like just after they started to be closed source or stopped being open source, depending on how you see it. I tried experimenting with them, and then I started training language models in Swedish. So that was when I started the company. That's what I did.
But you said you used KB-BERT.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So KB-BERT was like from the BERT model that came out of Google, and then Love, I guess, at Kungliga biblioteket. distilled down the first KB BERT model and made that. Was it available?
No, you fine-tuned BERT.
Fine-tuned BERT.
Yeah.
He fine-tuned BERT is a good better word for on the Swedish data that he has in Kungliga biblioteket. And then that was then open sourced on. You could download that on Hugging Face already then. Was it Hugging Face already then?
Yeah. And exactly. And this is also like, I mean, what I wanted to do was to just bring something to market, right? Like prove that I was good enough to build something that other people found valuable with AI. So that was what was available. And you have to narrow it down to just a very niche task. If you're gonna provide something of value when you are very few people, you need to be very small problem in a sense. So this problem was summarization on Swedish language, and then kind of I've been iterating on that ever since, like bringing something to market, seeing what problems arises with that, and then solving that problem.
Is it just for personal reasons, or what was the use case you tried to do summarization?
No. So that was like in the edtech sector. So like to take, for various reasons, you wanted to take a long text and make it shorter. So there was companies who wanted to take the long introductions of the Wikipedia and just make that more understandable for kids.
But you hadn't started Intric then,
right? No, exactly. That was the company that then morphed into Intric. So it's the same company, but I mean, I met Jonathan, my co-founder of Intric, like 6 to 12 months later after bringing this to market. So then he came along, we met, we both had this passion for AGI. Like it started as we met in how do you say, as like a student party. Someone graduated. My wife's little sister, I think, graduated, and I was speaking about this company that we were going to build AI. We just need AGI, and we just needed to bring a product to market and make it good, and then we'll get us to AGI.
You're planning to actually build AGI?
Yes. I mean, I still do.
I mean, it's the same as going to Mars and having several use cases and business models on the way.
Yeah, I think that's the long-term plan. But then we had customers in the public sector, and we saw the problems of, I mean, we saw two things, like me and Jonathan, right? We saw that, language models were becoming more and more, they were more and more investments into language models, right? We were doing a very small thing. That was, Google was investing 5,000 and 500,000 and 5 million into training runs. We can't compete with this long term. So we wanted to ride on this wave that we thought it would become.
So immediately you realize the trajectory of, it's going to be bigger and bigger, and they're going to invest more and more. So we need to build something as our product that becomes better when they invest more.
Yeah, exactly.
And this was approximately which year?
I mean, this is like 2022. Then the other realization was that when we bringing an API to market, and this is like a bit controversial as an engineer, bringing an API to market, you're not really solving the real problems. Like engineers at companies, they do something that then solve a problem, and they do something for a domain expert that then solve a problem. And so in most cases that is. So we wanted to take something and like build something for these domain experts where they could have this technology. So the two insights is basically like ride on the wave that is LLMs and build an interface for non-technical people. So it resulted in a model agnostic platform for non-technical people. And of course, we've added a lot of stuff now that also makes technical people love it. But that led us into the public sector because we also decided to solve the compliance challenges that we see and like the security aspects that come with that as well.
I mean, that is logical, because then you're going down into the problems that are not generic enough for the big actors to go worldwide on it, but it becomes like almost like a local Swedish problem.
Yeah.
And within that context now, the duck pond is different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so that's when you launched Intric, or
and that's so our 2023, because we narrowed it down to the public sector at that point and said we're gonna solve we're gonna be good in these processes like this, because the public sector, it's not one value chain there, so there's hundreds of value chain. A municipality, for example, they have hundreds of processes that they serve the citizens with, and so that is the perfect breeding ground for a general platform that also solves compliance and security things or problems. And then we just expanded from there. Like we solved their problems, and then we realized that there's adjacent industries that also have these problems. So now we're actually building for, Europe's most important organizations is how I choose to word it. So it's, public sector.
But it's to find the niche here. It's like public sector because it's the flavor of very many different processes.
Yes.
That ultimately is of high and low decisions and very operational. That ends up on a poor little municipality, or it ends up in one governmental department, and all that work needs to be done. And they have an underlying foundation which is generic around compliance and security.
Yes.
So if you do that really well and manage that smartly, so you can go in and set up these unique workflows without redoing the hardcore stuff every time.
Exactly.
So you started Intric. Where does the name come from, by the way?
Yeah, so it's a kind of, I think it's an abbreviation of intricatus, which means like complexity or something like that. I've never been like heavy on the names,
something that you could get a com or SC address on.
Yeah, that's a good. That's about the benchmark.
Okay, so you launched Intric, and if you were to just mention what's basically the mission of Intric, you say?
So the mission is this has been the same. The vision is from the same vision when I found artificial intelligence. I realized that the vision is like we want to elevate the human species using artificial intelligence. And
that's very general. Okay.
It's a big burden to shoulder, but I think it's a responsibility as an engineer. You have to. It makes sense to shoulder that responsibility because AI can have systemic impact. So I want to work for that it does.
And you want to work for it that it does in such a way that humans is elevated.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than humans disappear.
So humans should be able to we should be able to jump higher. We should be able to see further. We should be able to build more. We should design more beautiful. Like everything should just be better. And AI is the enabler of that.
And then you started to build some kind of product as well.
Yeah.
Right? And can you just explain what is the product and what's the main functionality it has?
Yeah. So, it's a platform. So a platform in its sense, we call it actually a workplace assistant platform. That's the category that we have defined. And so platform from the perspective of that you build things on top of it.
Right.
And assistant because it assists you in your work. It doesn't replace you, it assists you. And workplace because it's a professional thing. So it's for work, it's not for play. And what it does is that it allows our customers to build assistants. We choose to call them assistants still. We refuse to call them in the GUI agents because I think that's a hope. I hope that's a hype word that kind of dies down after a few years and people just realizes that AI is everywhere. It just assists you in work in various ways. So we don't want to jump on the hype train too much there. And I also want to infuse like organizations with the idea of AI is not there to replace you. I think that if we're going to survive as a species, or if people who work are going to have a better future, they should adopt the mindset of that you use AI to assist you and not to replace you, because then you will come into a mindset of like, okay, how can I be better? How can I use this? And not from a place of fear, like, how will this replace me? Because that's just a bad mindset, right? Like,
I think this is very important because it's the whole discussion of replacement versus augmenting work.
Yeah.
And I think one of the major topics why this becomes so bad is that, if we have drawn out roles where literally people in their current role job description is a cog in a machinery, is that even a humane job from the start? It's like treating a human as a robot. And from that perspective, when we are now elevating human work with assistant work, we need to elevate also how we define the role and what the human job is. Yeah. And all of a sudden, we are not a cog in the machine. We are the supervisors, operator, stewards of the machine.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now, then it's not the same process. We haven't replaced a person with AI. We have augmented the human cognition and work with assisting, enabling technologies.
Yeah.
So I think it's the replacement sounds like you're going to do exactly the same process, and you're going to replace one cog, human cog, with a machine cog, and that is the wrong way of looking at it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's when technology as this transformative comes along, it's very naive to think that we're going to work exactly like this, but just faster. But that's often how you start. That's often how the transformation journey has to start in order to build understanding.
That's our linear thinking. We can't deal with exponentiality really.
No, exactly. Yeah, I agree. But do you want me to circle back on maybe like, okay, this workplace assistant platform, what do you do with it?
Yes.
Thank you.
So
perhaps also thinking, you need to build a product that you can sell. You're a startup in some way, right? Did you take any funding, by the way, or have you started more organically?
We've done that recently. So actually, the whole point of the business is to build something like very sustainable. And I looked at, this goes back, if we go some more history, like I looked at the best companies in like 2020 when I started thinking about this, or putting it to work. I looked at the best companies in AI, and what they were doing is they were taking in external funding and then they were burning it in all sorts of directions. Like I'm speaking about OpenAI here mainly, and I was like, how is this long-term sustainable? And I wanted to take a different approach. So I wanted to bootstrap because, first of all, I wanted to prove that I was good enough, and then to be able to fundraise or expand from a more long-term or powerful position, if so to say. And so it led me to do that, and Jonathan really shared this vision. I think it's played out great for us, because then when you work also with the public sector or big enterprises as well, they want to know that there's underneath a sustainable business model. So that is my approach to it.
So your reason for funding was not really seed funding, but it's scaling funding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So exactly.
Okay, so how, for other people that may be trying to start a startup and they want to understand how to get started to get that initial funding, can you perhaps elaborate a bit more? How did you start up to build some product that enabled you to actually get this funding? Because you need to also have something to show and a trustworthy kind of market going forward.
Yeah, what was your bootstrap all about? How did you see that?
So I think it's incredibly hard to bootstrap something into the public sector, but I think if you go about it, I didn't do this way, but there's grants or there's organizations that you can partner with. There's things that you can do. If you start with funding, there's Vinnova funding, there's great things. There's funding to be had, so you can start there, but you fundamentally need to start with solving a problem. Like you need to solve a problem, and if you solve an important enough problem, someone will pay you money for that solution.
And that was your core bootstrapping, to try and figure out that narrow problem and get that
so what
sold.
That was the summarization of the Swedish text, and I think that there's hundreds of, I think the climate for starting new companies now is a lot better in a sense. But I wouldn't say maybe it's as transformative as the mass media says it will be. Like it's a market. So like, yes, it's easier to build technology, but that just means that more people are building technology. So there's more noise out there. You could probably go out on the internet and search thousands of AI platforms that might look like Intric on the surface, but underneath there's nothing.
So tell us, why should someone use Intric?
Yeah. So that leads back to the workplace assistant platform. Nice job there. So it's really about bringing the AI models close to domain experts. So you create these assistants, and their use cases, they fall into roughly 3 buckets, right? So it's for internal productivity. We can just say like that. If your company organization needs to be more efficient, this is your platform. And the assistants, they fall into one of 3 buckets. The first bucket is like this knowledge or information distribution bucket. So that's assistants that help you answer an FAQ or HR document or a policy around, for example, how you treat someone, how you help a service worker or something like that. That's for your technical people out there. Like it's a basic RAG thing.
Yes.
And it evolves into the second bucket, which is some sort of analytics or decision support. I should also say that these assistants, they're not binary buckets. They're usually overlapping. Exactly. But The second bucket is where I think most of the assistants in Intric today are like some sort of analytics or decision support. So that might be combine the results of this system with these policies with this thing that my boss just told me to do. Basically, you pull in information, you make some sort of intelligent document, and you make a conclusion for it, or you send it to someone. So that is that, and that's the third, takes us to the third bucket, which is some sort of process automation. So you can evolve these assistants. They can build plans that can automate entire processes. And they can be triggered by either an API call, incoming information somewhere, or by a schedule. So they can take information somewhere, they can look in another system and do something, and then they can output it either to you, to your mailbox, to Slack, or to another system. So that's the third bucket. And when you realize that these three buckets, then you realize like, holy shit.
There's a lot of work going in these buckets.
Most of my work, even my work as a CEO, falls into one of these three buckets. The only thing that doesn't fall there is some sort of meetings, but we also have transcription in the platform. So that kind of falls into a bucket somewhere. So yeah, that it's really up to the customer what they do with it.
So the key topic is that you find a way to generalize three fundamental assistant patterns.
Yeah.
And then from those fundamental assistant patterns, you need certain technology traits or,
Exactly.
AI compound system approaches.
Yep.
And within that, you can then go in and maybe 80-20, look at a lot of work we do in office that typically can end up in one of those buckets. So you have a good starting point from an infrastructure pattern there, what you have in your platform, which means you can go to the focus of actually uncovering the real workflow, because the technology, the pattern is more or less fairly generic.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I should also say that once you like acknowledge that this kind of patterns or this assistance, like when you acknowledge that this is how you can work or this is what you can build, then in our typical customers, it also comes stuff holding you back, because this stuff has been around for a while, but there's many organizations who haven't even gotten started yet. And they're held back by, for example, most often like knowledge that you don't know where to start or how to do it, but also security concerns, like our data is very sensitive, and compliance concerns. So the security and the compliance concerns and the knowledge, those are things we address in the platform as well. So here's where the model agnostic thing comes in. If you're a bigger organization, inevitably you have some information that you cannot leak to an American company, for example, because of the Cloud Act or GDPR, or you have some internal secret information which basically the CEO doesn't want to leave the basement, for example.
So what you're saying is that in a big enough company or in sensitive enough environments, you always come back that you need to have computational governance, you need to have policy steering that is easy to set up and automate as part of the system. So it's there, but you cannot expect the whole enterprise to know all the details of these policies. So it needs to be hidden from the masses, but the vital few can set it up easily.
But I guess an easy way to frame this, you mentioned, I think, a number of functional capabilities that you can have, but then you can have non-functional capabilities that other companies do not want to build or have hard time building themselves, meaning security, compliance, etc.
Exactly.
Can you just mention a bit, you mentioned the functional capabilities that you have. What about the non-functional capabilities?
Yeah. So for example, one thing would be if you take the use of AI models as an example, like you might have a policy, or you definitely have a policy by now. Most organizations have a policy where they say something like, these kind of models or this kind of use cases, we are allowed to use an American or an open model, for example. But this kind of use cases, we need to stay in Europe, or this we cannot use AI for at all for this and this and this reason. And we allow you in the platform to build out different rooms where these different, policies can be adhered to. So that is, I guess, a non-functional capability. You can think about it as rooms in a house, and you can build a room now we're sitting in a basement, so this would be the most secret, tightly locked down room where here we could only use on-prem model, for example, or even in our air-gapped version. So that allowing you to like transcend that. And another thing,
this is painful to build that scaffolding and sort it out.
Yes.
But when you have it, it's a non-functional requirement that probably plays into many different workflows. Exactly.
And another thing that is really painful to do is to build adequate logging and transparency into the decision processes.
Exactly.
So we have beautiful legislations that are coming that demand, dependent on how, like what risk category you fall in, or dependent on also, like some organizations just choose to do this from their own free will, but you need certain levels of transparency, or you need certain levels of human in the loop, certain level of logging, different retention policies, and all of these things are super painful to build and maintain. And so we build those things as well.
So policy, you can choose and customize basically when you should do what and in what way. You also have some logging to be able to be more compliant and easily comply with coming AI Act, etc.
And documentation needs and all that.
And I guess you have also some security features there, or thinking...
Depends on what you mean with security features, if you elaborate a bit.
I mean, you can take authorization, if we start with that.
Yes.
Who should have access to what? If you do integrations to your, I don't know, your HR systems or whatnot, I guess not everyone should access everything.
No, exactly. So there we usually mirror what organizations have put in place already. Like if you just sync with the AD account, you can like basically what you can view in SharePoint, your agents can view in SharePoint via Intric as well. So it mirrors those capabilities. Yeah, but there's for sure more exciting things to do there as organizations. Like what we try to avoid, or we definitely avoid, is this like I'm not sure what it's called now, but I think it's called the lethal trifecta, where you kind of give external access and you have no policies or no IAM, and then you have what's the last thing? I think the last part is that you just have an LLM there basically. So it allows, if you have that, if you don't think about this, you could end up in the lethal trifecta where someone could essentially prompt inject you to retrieve a lot of information from the outside of the organization. So we are as far away from that as you could possibly think. And I think a lot of companies or a lot of organizations that rush into AI, you could end up there accidentally without even thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, like, so that's the trifecta in terms of access to private data, exposure to untrusted content, and external communication capabilities.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up because I want to get to the main. Move into the themes quite soon, Anders.
Let's do that. But a lot of companies have a problem with I call it shadow AI, or a lot of people call it that, and they just copy and paste a lot of data and files into the public external services, and I guess this is something that Intric could help with potentially as well to fight that kind of problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of shadow AI arises because you as an organization don't give powerful enough tools to your team members.
But then you do have access to models underneath that is powerful still, right? So you don't have your own model, you use the public one available, right? Or open source version, or what do you use underneath?
So our standpoint around models is that we actually don't, I think we do one thing really well is that we abstract away like the stress of following the latest LLMs, like that. We do some amount of surveying and we put in models that we think actually move the needle. But we also don't weigh in on what model should be used where. So I think that's quite appreciated in organizations where you have also ethical concerns and also where you appreciate stability, that all of a sudden it just doesn't change underneath your feet what you're using. So we add all of the models. We even add models from American providers just because the frontier labs, that's where they end up first. So they end up first in the US behind US APIs, and then they come in Azure, hosted in Europe, which under what I call like fake sovereignty, still an American provider, but it's in Europe. And then at last, like 6 to 9 months later, an equally capable open source model is released either by China or some other company, and then we can actually download it and run it in Sweden or even on-prem.
But just to sort of wrap up the positioning and understanding of Intric, and I'm going to do this in a little bit more pointed way. in my opinion, a lot of AI investment when people were rushing into AI 2025 was sort of like enterprises or maybe even public sector, but I think this is even more enterprises. Oh, we need to get started with this AI thing, and they forgot about machine learning and everything like that. And what we're talking about was different styles of generative AI, and they literally went and bought a very large open AI enterprise licenses. They ended up switching on Copilot in Microsoft everywhere and say, what about now we have AI? So if you want to contrast what you are actually doing with Intric and how different that is to going down that route, because I think for some decision maker, it's not so clear that this is a quite big difference. How would you meet me when I say, oh, I don't need you, I have Copilot? Yeah, how would you meet that discussion?
Yeah, so then I would ask if you're first I would probably ask like what kind of data are you processing now? And then, I mean, if it's just like summarizing a document with open information, then I would say, okay, yeah, sounds like that works there. And then I would ask, is that everything that you think you would do for in the coming future? Like, is that everything that your organization can do? Or do you think you could do more? And then...
Is that real workflows or is these tasks of individuals?
I mean, it depends on what you reply, right? But probably it's like, yeah, once I understand that I can summarize a document, I also realize that I could be comparing this to our internal strategy, or I could be case handling like a building application. And very soon you start to get into either an integration with some bespoke system or treating sensitive information. And then you run into a problem with these kind of systems. The large ones that are built for the entire world to use, they are not catered for the specific needs, and they are not able to adjust to regulations and I would say like customization that different organizations have. I mean, it took Copilot, what did it take? Like 3 years. I still don't think that in the basic version you can attach a file, right? So like you've been able to attach files for years to Intric, and it's this kind of things like it when the giants move, they move, but it's incredibly slow.
But isn't it all about having something that caters for the ubiquitous use case like Copilot?
Yeah, exactly.
Means that it needs to be super broad in terms of versatility, which means it doesn't really have a harness, it doesn't have a framing that makes it, all those things. You can't use that in a specific workflow because then you need to put in the ifs and buts. Yeah. You need to be able to put the scaffolding around, the harness around, the policy around, and how to do that. And it's not really part of what that system is meant and designed to do.
Exactly.
So you end up doing a lot of things to the Copilot setup that the Copilot system is not designed for, simply because it solves a different use case, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that is like a little bit of the Intric sales pitch. It's almost like you're working here part-time or something, but because I mean, it comes as a natural follow-up question on what do you want to use it for. Then all people, or most people I should say, they have more complex things, they have more sophisticated things, or they have slightly different workflows that they want to do.
They need to live in the real world with the real world fucking messiness.
Yeah, exactly.
And a universal ubiquitous system is not designed for messiness deviation.
Yeah.
So then you need to fix that yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And that we give the people who know what you need to do the power to do that themselves.
As long as they know what is the messiness and they know what to do, we make it easy to fix that part. So that is that's the different types of feature set that Intric is coming with in order to do that. Yeah. That simply doesn't exist in a Copilot environment. Yeah. Sorry, I'm selling for you.
No, but I think it's it's actually.
But I don't think people distinguish it's apples and bananas. Yeah. I love apples and I love bananas. But I don't really want apples in my banana split.
But just to challenge that a bit as well, I mean, I think everyone is working on how to build agents these days, and I guess Intric is categorizing itself to be an agent builder in some way. Yep. And then we can think about, all the big enterprise companies are, Microsoft are, Google are, and Azure and Amazon are building these kind of agent building environments. how will, I mean, they have huge budgets, of course, and they have, so much distribution. They have the users already and the other tooling and integration into Office and so many more things. So I've been thinking I should ask this question, but I couldn't stop myself here. But given the moat that they do potentially have there, with how easy and well integrated it will be, what will make Intric unique in that aspect?
Yeah, so I think the main differentiator is like in the numbers, or numbers. I can talk about that later, but the real thing that we have managed to crack, or seem to have managed to crack, is that we can meet the people who are trying to adopt the AI in their work, like so giving people interfaces that they can work with and that they can mold. That's how you get usage, because I mean, in the world of software, anyone can build anything super quickly. So you have to, first of all, build it very fast, but you also have to build the things that the end user likes to use. And I mean, you can speak, if you just take the fact that for a large part of the world, they can't even be using those systems to begin with. That is just starts to that sets the playing field a little bit for compliance reasons. But then when you want to have an integration to a specific system, or when you want to slightly mold it in a way where you want to, like, how can I say this? When you want to build a workflow and you don't want to have a like very complex drag and drop thing that like engineers, you need to be an engineer or a PhD to solve, that is like the differentiator. So, I mean, when you look at like retention numbers, like the retention numbers on an organization that rolls out Intric versus someone who rolls out Copilot, there's 20 times higher retention rates on Intric versus Copilot. And so this is something like, it's bad to say on a podcast, but you can't really speak about it. You need to feel it. Yeah. So it doesn't really work for a podcast, but do you understand what I mean?
The usability practically, in a practical sense, in a real world sense.
Yeah.
Is okay, but this is also something copy. But maybe this is also about how you went to a niche to really fully understand a very niche context of where you want to do.
Yeah.
So you're not trying to solve everything. You're trying to solve 3 buckets really, really well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm going to stop here because I really wanted to move into what I think is the main theme. When we had the conversation, I was excited to get you on board. I mean, like, knowing more about Intric, I think is a super interesting product, and we was, you are pre-chat GPT. Was it 23 or 22 now? November 23, right?
Yeah.
So that's so you saw this. Well, we saw this in this pod as well. We were following the benchmarks of the GPTs, blah blah blah.
Nice.
No one else was. So this is cool. But now I want to move into the sort of the meat and potatoes, what I think is the main theme. Because one of the key things you did early was actually to focus on real problems, which are very much part of the public sector core fundamental policy, problem, working environment. So we put the theme as navigating AI innovation in the public sector. And of course, that's a theme that has 2 underlying main perspectives. I mean, like, how did you go about navigating as a startup to find the customer, to get through procurement? My own personal view is like, I'm not touching public sector because they are too hard to work with. I don't know how that works. And you are thriving in that environment. So that's sort of the startup angle. How do you navigate? And then more importantly, you just released a playbook. I think you've done more or less 50 AI journeys with different types of anything from municipalities to some serious big government agencies.
Yeah.
So 50 AI journeys of different projects in public sector.
Yeah.
And by that now you start seeing patterns of what works and doesn't work. So you decided to publish a playbook on that. Yeah. So that is to explore your navigation, but then explore the navigation of the public sector unit that needs to do something or wants to do something.
Yeah.
But this we can go on for hours if you want to. But if we start in the first topic, could you start just elaborating? How did you actually succeed as a startup and scaling up? So like, what was your main approach going into finding customers, and what hoops did you go through in order to land your first customers? What 5? So how did you do it practically?
So I think if you go back to the early days, it's just like pick an important problem and show up every day. Work extremely hard and show up every day, 7 days a week.
Be specific. So you found a problem and you found some actor. You founded a key player, a key sponsor.
Yeah.
That you started to talk with, and you put a lot of effort to build the relationship and understanding. Well, what did you do?
Yeah. So that was just bringing that. How can we say? It's just like deciding on something that you think is going to be big. Like starting a company in general is a huge bet, right? So like you have to just take a bet on some problem that you think will be important. And so that was what the bet was. Like text summarization, that's probably important. And then you find someone who is willing to pay some money for that, and then you jump through the hoops. Like you just jump through the hoops. Okay, what does that mean? It means answering how you develop the software. It means answering how the system is built. It means building the system. It means all of these things. And then once you have solved one problem in a good way, then if you solve it well, people will talk. So that's the beauty of public sector. They will talk. They will tell each other about that it's good. And then you can talk to more people and you say, I did a good job here. Do you have similar problems? And then you just continue like that.
All right. So to summarize, you figure out the process together with one client, and then one of the key things is then reference sales or the community.
Yes.
But I really want to stop at landing the first deal or the second deal.
Yep.
How does that look like? Because to me, how can they buy you? Don't you need to have a public tender? Don't you need to do a lot of things? So does that mean someone loves your product and then you need to back up the date and do the LOU public tender? Or how does that practically work?
Yeah, so when there's what's called direct procurement, where if it's the contract value is below 700,000 per year, you can do direct procurement. They can ask 3 people or 3 independent actors, can you deliver the service? Whoever does it at the lowest cost wins. So that's how you do it without a public tender.
So there is step 1 as a startup, know about the direct procurement law and keep smart under 700,000.
Yeah,
that's a very rule of thumb, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then you're asking, how do you scale that and how do you grow? I don't think it's any different in the public sector compared to other industries. Like, it's a boring generic statement, but like, do a good job, work really hard, and good things will follow. The difficult thing comes, I think the interesting thing to speak about is like, how do you do that across more, like how do you go from municipalities to government agencies to other regulated industries? That is something I think we're still figuring out, but we have grown to a...
But now you're getting to proper deals where the 700 is not really relevant anymore. So then you end up in a process where even if you build relationships, there is a bureaucracy here that you need to play that game. That's... And what have you learned about that? To answer tenders in a certain way and to have a team that does tenders, or practicalities of getting into the tendering approach? Are you there, or can you avoid it?
No, we answer a lot of tenders, and I think I can speak about that. I was just at a hearing with the Minister of Public Affairs about how can we improve tenders, because I think like tenders in general, I'll speak about this, I think it's pretty interesting. Tenders in general are perfect for when you want to buy things that are very static, yes, and very explicit. So it works perfectly for buying chairs for a school or buying pens or buying hospital beds. It's a perfect system for that. But for buying software that should evolve over time, it's really a terrible thing, right? Because like if you put too many demands, or if you put wrong demands, the people, especially buying AI products, it's very hard to figure out what you're going to do with AI in the first place.
I put the use case of the platform in the tender, right?
Yeah. Or do you put requirements about specific things? Like it's super hard to procure AI. And that I don't have a solution for. I just know that when I look at a lot of tenders, I'm like, oh, if we answer this, that means we need to build stuff that is really bad for like the good of the company long term, so we can't answer that. But I think also bigger enterprise deals follow the same patterns. Like if you want to land a big deal, there's always requirements on the other side. So fundamentally, it's not that different. It's just that, it's a little bit more rigorous.
Is that really geared for innovation?
No, it's not.
Investment? I think that's the main problem, because innovation means that you're installing a tool in order to figure out the new doing.
Yeah.
So the new doing, so invention is the inventing of tools. Innovation is the new doing of things.
Yeah.
Different, right?
Yeah.
So innovation investment is super hard to put in a tender. Per default, you need to figure it out together.
Yeah.
So that needs the fundamental different process. So, and I think AI innovation ends up in that bucket more or less every time.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so impressed that how you navigated this.
Yeah.
Because the tendering process doesn't make any sense.
No, I mean, especially if you want to build new things. But I think that's also very unfortunate because, I mean, it leads to that if you want to do new things, it leads to often buying consultancy services, or it leads to companies having business models that incentivizes incremental improvement or over tailoring, and that is I think really bad for us as a nation long term, right? It's not something for me to figure out, but the government, I think they're on it with the dynamisk inköpssystem and stuff that they're putting in.
Speaking a bit about the highlights that you did find, what did you really come up with that you published in the report?
Yeah, so I think there's one really interesting thing there's one model. So the main finding that I'm not sure how controversial it is to you guys or to the world of AI, but it's definitely revolutionary to the public sector, I think, is that, AI adoption doesn't start as an IT project. So you need people, like the key theme that we've looked at all of the customers. I mean, it's biased because they've used our platform, right? But we looked at all the journeys who've adopted the platform in a fast way. So that we tried to mitigate for the bias of, that they used our platform, and just looked at which ones have done it the fastest, which one have gotten time to value fast. And the pattern there is that you have some sort of horizontal layer. You involve people from all parts of the organization in a tight core working group, and they together decide on a framework how you build AI, or how the AI goes into their specific part of the organization. So you could call it a ambassador group or AI task force or something. When you have that, and when you involve key players from also who are usually blockers, like if you involve a lawyer there, or if you involve a DPO, CIO, then it goes a lot faster. And because then everyone gets buy-in from the start, and you can weigh in on the legal matters before they become an issue, or before something is rolled out into production and they want to pull the brakes because they weren't involved.
So what we did now, we switched gears a little bit, moving from the practicalities of navigating as an AI startup to actually go into the report. What was the playbook? What was the game with the playbook? And then we continue with that. What is the playbook? You released the playbook.
Yeah, I did it, or we did it, because it's really important for Sweden as a nation to embrace AI. It's one, like the government pointed out that we should be the top 10 in the world in our use of AI. That was published in February this year. And if we're gonna be serious about it, we need to do a lot in a mindset shift. So because the technology is there, and now it's about putting things into practice. So we, of course, who had done seen these journeys, we wanted to share how it's done, because a thing of our, like, some of our most important, or not important I shouldn't say, but some of our biggest customers we're not even allowed to talk about, and they definitely don't talk in public about what they do with AI. But if we can share the common pattern in a totally abstract way, where we can still give value back to society and to other organizations about how you succeed, that is a thing that it's just a responsible thing to do. It's a reasonable thing to do, to like push the nation. It's like to elevate the species.
And how did you structure the playbook? And I'm sure we can download it soon.
Yeah.
But how was the major setup of the playbook? How, you said a couple of chapters, and what are the key chapters that you are looking into?
I mean, one of the things, the themes are how you organize yourself and how you approach. So this is what I said, like the ambassadors and so on. Yeah. And then it's about how it's actually based on, a SAMR model. It's about how you adopt new technology. It comes from the ed tech sector, where it's about like, one theme is like that you do things in 4 levels. So like the first level is about like substituting or augmenting as existing. You should just actually read it. I think I will. We don't get any readers if I spoil that one. But it's a 4-step process that starts with just incremental improvements and ends in changing the process altogether. And you can look at the intermediate paths yourself.
I like that, because a lot of people then say that you shouldn't use AI to improve existing processes. You should just do transformational, and I think that's very wrong. I think it's actually good to start to improve existing ones, right?
Nice. Yeah, I totally agree. I
think that's a big learning.
Yeah, nice. We can have you in as a co-author on the next one.
But isn't also learning then that in order those 4 levels exist for a reason, because you need to go about it. The work is slightly different.
Yes.
Improving is one type of work. Reworking, the 4th level is. It's a different, and maybe it's easier to evolve, but it's ultimately it leads to different things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think why it works is that I think that we haven't done this experiment, but it would be a very interesting experiment if someone could go into an area with where they think they will adopt AI, and then they hypothesize about how that process will look like from you do it on day 0 and you say, we're going to change it to be this. And then you start incrementally changing and you start learning, and then you see and you do it incrementally. I can almost guarantee you that what it turns out to be the augmented process in the end, once you have iterated through, it's going to be totally different from what you predicted in the beginning, because you have learned stuff. I mean, your organization has learned about the models. You have figured out that this API didn't exist. You have figured out that it was too costly to run the query like that. You have figured out that the error rates compound after the various agent calls. So all sorts of things you have figured out that this wasn't a valuable business process to automate in the first place. So all sorts of things happen along the way.
Are you saying that it's actually smart to start small and going?
Yeah, of course.
Even don't be shy to start with improvement, because if you do it right, it can lead to the real reimagination.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's an iterative evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's super easy to get stuck in discussions if you're going to transform a whole process. It's super easy to get stuck in discussions around budget, legal things,
but I think it's really dangerous to start with transformation.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
It takes a lot of time and usually gets stuck. So actually finding short wins or early wins is even more important. And then you actually learn as well what you can use or do with AI.
Exactly.
So but it's much more strategic to do it in that way.
Exactly.
But what we are talking about here is not thinking about a moonshot or the extreme reformation as we will brilliantly figure that out once, but we are thinking about the super fast learning curve. What do you think? Isn't this like this the way it evolves, even the reformation?
But I think a problem is most organizations, especially in the public sector, is super slow to change. Meaning people have their way of doing things, meaning you have internal workflows and processes that is even defined by law in some cases, and actually changing them is extremely hard.
Yeah.
If you have to wait until they are changed, you will not find value from AI for a very long time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's very easy to see that you need to do it this way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you worked with AI at the police as well, Anders. I'm sure you didn't start by changing everything, on day 0.
That would be very, very bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because you get into the topic then, if you have now completely potentially reformed a business unit, and it can be amazing, but it doesn't hook up to the other processes anymore, then it's this real problem. The real change is then super hard because everything else needs to change as well.
Yeah.
I get it.
Cool.
What else can we talk about? If you want to summarize a little bit about what we think you have seen as the key. I mean, like we summarize, like what are the key recipes of things of success? The horizontal team is one of them.
Yeah.
Do you have any other like standouts that you think this pattern shows up?
Yeah. Another thing that would be, I mean, you do the horizontal layers, you do the like incremental improvements, and then the third thing is like the courage from the leadership. It's not to be underestimated because, I mean, some of these things will not work out exactly the way you want it to. And then it's very easy to, if you don't have support from the leadership, or if you don't have courage in the leadership that builds a team that fails sometimes, then you will stop or you will not start at all. So the courage, it doesn't have to come all the way from the top, but that is very important to be able to figure out how you're going to do it, because it will take slightly longer time or you will take different turns. So the courage in the leadership. And another thing is like, it doesn't say explicitly in the playbook, but to navigate these transformation journeys with like a compass rather than GPS coordinates is something that I usually like to say. So and that means more practically, like, don't tell your team exactly what tool to use, exactly what library, exactly what models, how you're going to do it. Like, say we're going to use more of this technology to achieve this result, like set a direction.
Because some of these things you can't really detail and plan them. It's not a rollout, it's a navigation of uncharted waters, and then you have a compass direction, and then you need to adjust.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you have started to write this playbook, or what's the current status of the playbook?
Yeah, no, it's released, so you can download it, and you get some
What's the name?
insight.
If someone wants to find it, what should they?
I mean, you should go to our website intric.ai, and you should press on the news, I think, or look us up on LinkedIn, and there you can find it. Yeah. Otherwise, I can share a link.
I think it's organizing AI in the public sector.
Exactly. Yeah,
is the name of the report.
Exactly.
I asked Gemini, is it up? Can you access it online? So
you need to put in your mail, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We should probably ungate that content. Actually, I'll circle in with the team.
But should we have a news section, by the way, guys?
Oh yeah, right.
We should do it now. Yeah, let's do a quick one.
Yes.
It's time for AI News, brought to you by AIAW Podcast.
So we usually have a small break, not so small all the time, but a break in the middle of the podcast to just reflect on the latest AI news that we heard, and just go around the table and share some short stories about what we have seen recently.
I can start. So Intric has a report which is on implementing.
That's a great one. Implementing AI in the public sector. So that's something that everyone should look up, I think. Daniel, do you have some news that you recently seen in the last couple of weeks?
I mean, yeah, sure. So I saw that like Cloudflare started like creating AI agents that like navigate the internet, started to create accounts and like deploy apps and build stuff. So I'm not sure what the like purpose is, but I'm like, my reflection on AI, I'm a little bit concerned about the internet and information in general. I think it's probably not a novel standpoint from people who understand LLMs, but I'm wondering what the internet would look like in 5 years if we will like
when it's mostly LLM produced.
Yeah. So that
garbage on garbage.
Yeah. Or like if you build a SaaS service, like do you even know if you have real users? Or like Twitter, what's the state of Reddit? Like, is it only bots or something? Like I don't know anymore. Like it's scary.
It's like, I guess like the normal roads that we have, today is human drivers, but in 10 years probably the main drivers will not be human anymore.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, as well. Yeah, cool stuff. Henrik, do you have something?
I'll go last.
Okay, so I think a big event was the Google I/O. It's basically the big developer conference that Google had that was happening this week. And they, of course, released a large number of things.
All right.
Everything, the new 3.5 Flash model that is much faster than others and still performing similarly to what the biggest Opus models and latest Pro models are using. Probably great for Intric to use as well. Yeah. But and of course, everyone, I think all the big labs are really focusing, I think, on two things: just making AI work for development, for coding, and for agentic workflows, stuff. And they're building a lot of tooling around that to add, both the agentic feature, but also enterprise functionality around the agent themselves. But I think one thing that I'd like to mention that they had, it I think is a bit strange, and it may not sound like a big thing, but I think it is. And they basically call it agentic search, meaning if you just go to the normal Google search and you search for stuff, now it actually will, of course, use AI summaries as it's done for a long time. But now they are actually building software in real time, meaning if you ask a question like, how does a protein work? It not only summarizes that with AI, it actually builds a software in real time for that specific search, show that kind of interactive piece of content, and then throw it away.
Damn.
Now, this is actually much bigger than people think. And let me try to elaborate why. So Sam Altman, even back in 2024, said, there will be a time in the future when we will have on-demand software, meaning software that you build because you need it here and now, and then throw it away 1 minute later. This time is actually here now. We actually can so quickly and easily build software that you can do it in milliseconds in a single Google search for a single user and then just throw it away.
Yeah.
This is actually a very, very big thing, I think. So we literally have on-demand software now being deployed.
We
That's
talked
insane.
about this.
I didn't know
We joked about this thesis and trajectory on this podcast maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. And then now we're actually seeing it.
Yeah.
What do you think it enables?
It's a different paradigm.
I mean, it's so many things. And, if you just think, okay, if I can take 1 minute perhaps to just elaborate a bit more. 3 minutes. Oof, okay. Now it's No, but it's much bigger than people think. If you just elaborate and try to, in Elon style, think in the limits, thinking if it is that easy to generate code and build code, meaning you can do that quickly and then just, so cheap you can throw it away. What does that mean for normal software? Some people say, software as a service is dead. I don't buy that. That's a bad thing to do. But what it does mean is that the role, I would say, between a developer and a user gets merged, meaning that users actually start building software. And that normal users, the normal kind of interaction you will see in the future is that users change software. And software will not be this static thing that someone else does. You will do it as a user. When you drive a car in the future and you use like parking functionality and you see, I didn't like the way it did that parking. Then you tell the car, go and change yourself. Change the parking functionality so it does like this. And the car says, okay, I'm done that. Now the software is updated and now it works like this. And it's just for that car and it's just for you. Or potentially it can be uploaded so it starts to roll out for all the cars. This is a very big thing. The merge of the developer and the user, when the user becomes a developer, is something that we are starting to see. And I don't think people appreciate the change that will have in what we consider software to be in the future. So yeah, I think this is a really big stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive if they serve that at scale as well. Like that is next level.
Like a billion searches per day.
Yeah.
Of course, not everyone is building software, but still.
It's cool.
It's cool stuff. So I think we will see a lot of stuff happening here, and what software really means will change because of what we're seeing here.
Yeah. Do you guys think? How long do you think it will take before nobody looks at code anymore?
I mean, in some applications we're there, of course. Lovable has been doing that for a long time.
But I mean nobody now, like really nobody.
But it's like, will nobody ride a horse? I still ride a horse, even though I know I can drive a car or be ridden by a car. But some people will always love to code, right?
Yeah.
And there will always be some niche use cases, but the 99% of the use cases will not mean that humans will write programming languages, and at least, right, in not too far of a distance, I would say. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think. I mean, I also agree. Like, you could sometimes when I try to predict the future, I just think about the past. Like, I mean, still somebody still writes compilers, right? So, like, it just. I think I'm in your court as well. Like, there will be some people who still look at code. I think probably forever, but it will be. Probably the ratio of the people who write compilers to the people who write normal software will be similar to how many people look at normal code or look at code at all versus someone who just prompts.
There's always some nerds.
Yeah, yeah.
A couple of quick more news. We have a deal on the AI Act simplification. Did you follow that?
Yes.
So it sort of says a couple of things. It came through, I think, last week. From 2nd of December 2027 now for AI system with a high risk use case is some of the new things will apply, and some things from 2nd of August. I'm not going to go into details. And then not only did they sort of clarify and let us go on certain things, they actually increased and put more clear bans on what is called nudifier apps and stuff like that. So it was one thing taking where it was unclear, giving us more time to get sorted, but at the same time adding stuff more sharply that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
What do we think? Good work?
I mean, I think it's a bit emblematic of the EU AI Act, like this omnibus, as it's called.
This is what it's called.
Yeah. I think it's emblematic to the EU and regulation, right? Like it's a little bit like I should just say my stance first. I am pro some amount of regulation because I think the purpose of regulation, as I've interpreted the EU Act, is to ensure that there's no dystopic stuff, right? Like this is where the foundation comes from, so that there's no citizen surveillance and so on, and that is good. But the way, unfortunately, it was formed during the merge of foundational models, so they had to slap on a bunch of things that made it, super hard to follow and even harder, hard to understand and even harder to implement and live up to. So I think it's emblematic. When I looked at the first stab of it, I was like, how should we be able to comply to this? Like copyright, you were supposed to give copyright attribution to how you trained LLMs. Like I see you smiling, Anders. That is just impossible to comply with.
But for me, this is always back to the topic that the regulation and to have regulation is great, but we are really, really bad on execution.
Yeah, exactly.
How to work on this.
Exactly.
I mean, step number one, which we have talked on this podcast, is not a very good idea when it's only lawmakers and policymakers, no engineers, no one who knows what it means in practice, when you separate the policy making completely from the practicality of what to do, it won't fly. So this is one problem, that it's simply the wrong mix of people. We say horizontal team, is a good idea.
Yeah.
It wasn't horizontal and broad enough, whoever came up with it. This is number one. Number two is, it's very problematic when we come in out with policy but no harmonized standards.
Yeah.
Because harmonized standards is the main thing. I don't care about the regulations. Tell me what I'm going to do in order to be okay, and then I will do it.
Yeah.
But when you can't define that, you have a problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my banging because I'm annoyed. So it's back to the execution, right? How you can have such a distance between policy making, naively think you're done, then comes harmonized standards. Same problem in GDPR. We should have learned better. So it's more like, it's kind of a package, dude. You do the first thing, you do the second thing. It's like there's two sides on a coin. You can't really release a coin in the market if it doesn't have two sides. It's that simple to me, right? So it's a way how you are completely neglecting shit, or the most important things to adhere to the law, that makes that the first part just fluff, innovation theater or regulation theater. That's sort of my, so the angle here, this is great. Omnibus for me then, used to have the conversation, just put the clarity, put the spotlight on this blind spot. It's sort of, dudes, you haven't thought this through. That's what Omnibus did to me, which I thought was great.
But still, I think it's important to make really clear that regulation in itself is a good thing.
It's good.
We
Yeah,
need,
100%.
and the intention of the AI Act and GDPR is good.
It's
things.
good.
Yeah.
It's more the way to execute it and make
Yes.
sure that we have a fair chance for companies to comply with it.
Exactly.
But I guess also that's one of the USPs that Intric can help.
Yeah,
with, right?
exactly. I mean, it's very like it's a tough situation, right? Because I mean, the essence of them are good, the follow up but I think I also have to give some credit to the AI office who is supposed to like follow up on this, because one of the main things I said, I was visiting Brussels when they were stipulating this. I said, please hire some technical people.
Exactly.
And they hired a bunch of technical people. Like there's actually really good people in the AI office now. But of course, like there's a lot of momentum on this. So it's it's hard to catch up now. But I think the omnibus is emblematic of like, we did some stuff and now we need more time to figure it out. And I think that it's really good that these things get through and that it goes reasonably quick to like realize, okay, there's not enough time to understand how we should implement it, and if anyone's going to comply, we need more time. So that's good that happened.
But is it because the intention is great. Is it a different way of doing this? Because what we're dealing with here is also the difference, as you said before, like we talk about procurement. This is not a fixed share with a very specific frame on it. I mean, like if you take a lot of EU regulation about how you put standards in electricity and stuff like that, it's a very clear and framed environment that is then you can go about regulation in one way. When it's a very uncertain and fluid environment and highly rapidly evolving environment, I don't think you can use the same fundamental process. So this is maybe another thing.
Yeah, I disagree, because like I think it's just it's just a consequence of how well we understand the technology.
Yeah.
Like if you compare electronics, like anyone, you can have a certain standard for like what rating is this cable rated for, right? And how much EMI can this circuit board emit? And since we understand that relatively well, maybe not EMI, but like at least how much heat current through cables develops, it's very easy to say, of course you cannot run 20 amps through a like 24 AWG cable because it's gonna heat up. But like when you don't understand current, it's hard to say how many amps can run through it. So now we're in a state where most people don't understand the AI, so the standards that are forming around it is like unclear. But when we understand it, it will be more clear how we should regulate it.
So I disagree with you, because there are two versions to this answer.
Yeah.
First, you have the storytelling. Step number one of the problem, people who doesn't know enough about the core underlying technologies trying to regulate something.
Yeah.
I concur with that would sum up that it's actually, you can disagree. Then we do full circle with the innovation speed of doubling rate and capability, and where the trajectory is going and which one is now happening. And now AGI pops up, generative AI pops up.
Yeah.
Then it's a very fluid market.
Yeah.
So then who can know? No one can know.
Yeah, but
Who is knowledgeable?
Yeah.
No one is knowledgeable. So how do you then regulate?
Yeah,
because then your argument that we need to find knowledgeable people flips, because there is no knowledgeable people who can anticipate where we're going. So once again, it's a very fluid environment. So it's not only about knowledge.
Yeah.
Or it's knowledge at such a rapid pace that no one can keep track.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
So that to me is like, how we need regulation, right? But what's the process then? I don't have an answer. I think it's difficult.
I mean, my only statement is that it's hard to regulate something that you don't understand. And when we do understand it to a better degree, then we'll be able to more properly regulate it.
But is that the point, that we should not regulate until we understand it? Because that sounds dangerous also. That would be one statement. Don't try to regulate something until you understand it.
No, I think we should.
That's also crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think we should try to regulate to a small enough degree that we don't limit our capabilities to innovate and compete. So that is, and where is that limit? It's super hard. It's very debatable.
How do you see this,
We
Anders?
need AGI to solve this.
Yeah, I think
We don't need to care about it anymore.
Touche.
Perhaps we should move on.
We move
here
on.
as well.
We move on.
And one question that is interesting, I think, and rather hot topic potentially, is the idea of sovereign AI. And there is a lot of definitions of what sovereign AI really could mean. Is actually using Google Cloud on-prem, which you can do still sovereign or not? Or if we start there, what do you mean when you use the term or hear the term sovereign AI?
Yeah, so to me, sovereignty over a thing means control over it. And so when you take that in its purest form, data sovereignty then means control over your data. And so when you put that, so that means if an organization should have data sovereignty, they should have control over the data. And that means who can access it and what can they do with it. And if you ask the follow-up question, is Google Cloud on-prem sovereign or not? Then it becomes it's a hard question to answer, because anything like you have the Cloud Act, for example, that stipulates that at any point when the American government suspects terrorism, they can say, we need this data now, and they have to comply. So that means that Google has to do everything in their power to give the government that data. So it doesn't matter if it's on-prem or not, or if it's on a cloud that is in the EU. If there's an American company that has some probable way of getting that data, they can get it. So then it's in that rawest form, it's not sovereign. You could, of course, argue that, if you air gap your system, if you unplug everything, the Google employees cannot come and get it. But then also, it's not a way to have a functioning system, because then you don't get security updates or you don't get any patches or improvements to your systems. So that's what sovereignty means to me, control over a thing.
Mm-hmm. Well said. And I guess it's different levels of sovereignty as well. You can argue that as well. So okay. But anyway, I guess in the European aspect and in public sector especially, this is an important question. And there is a problem also, of course, that if we need to have an application running that is perhaps dependent on Intric, and you need to interact with or integrate with a lot of other systems, and they need to run on the latest type of functionality, then of course the big cloud providers have great functionality there. So there, in some sense, you could argue that there is a balance between what quality of functionality do you want versus what is the quality of control, sovereignty control in some sense. Would you agree? Is that?
Yeah, of course. It's a trade-off for sure. Yeah. Like you could reason about it if you are as an organization want total sovereignty, then you should do everything yourself. Yeah. You should not work with any vendors, and you should hire people to do everything in your business from A to Z. And that is, of course, not possible. As people in functioning businesses, that's not possible. So it's a question of choosing. It's the build versus buy problem, right?
But it's also around understanding what your real value is and understanding how to maximize your value, and what is your uniqueness versus what do you outsource in general, etc., etc.
Yeah, exactly.
So it becomes a more fundamental topic of what is most important and critical to you and to your fundamental business.
Yeah, exactly. And I can tell you that my firm opinion is that whenever there's a technology shift, you can see that whenever there's a technology shift, I think there's a tendency to think that this new technology is so transformative, so we have to do it ourselves. If you do too much yourself, it's an opportunity cost of improving your processes or making sure that you work on applying this new technology. So I think it's fundamental, like the businesses who succeed are the ones who figure out how to use AI in the best way and to really solve the build versus buy problem. And I think there's very, very few organizations out there who should build a lot when it comes to AI. I think that
that's a different thing with AI, that it is surprisingly difficult to do. Yeah. And of course, building foundational models is very hard for most or almost everyone to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's your experience then, having worked with public sector organizations here? How has that been? What's their thinking, if you were to share about
the fun perspective that I think not so many people think or anticipate is that there's not really a big consensus on how you should do it. Like I work with companies of all sizes, across Sweden, and there are small organizations who go full on-prem, and there are big organizations who go full, American clouds, so but I think there's, in general, if you compare public to private, it's more skewed towards, doing more things yourself or being more on-prem to that sense. So that is the movement I see, but and there's been also a tendency to fall into the trap of building a lot of things yourself initially. But I know that also I myself as an engineer, if I worked at one of these organizations, how can you not want to work with this technology? So I think it takes really like a discipline for the leadership to realize like, where should I put my technical people? And so that is, I think I see it evolving now. I think a lot of organizations have built some simple RAG stuff. They're seeing the pains of maintaining that, or they're comparing their simple RAG stuff to buying a system, and they're seeing like, holy shit, we can't keep up. And that is a shift that I'm seeing now.
I think that's good that you say that, because some people that I hear, they just keep talking about, it's just a wrapper about an LM. And I think it's such a wrong way to phrase it, because the product is the thing around the LM.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is much more difficult than people think.
Yeah.
And to keep up with what the big players are doing here is super hard, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I think, sovereignty, you can also think about, what is really the dangers of not being sovereign here. Of course, we can think about the economical impact. If Trump suddenly increased the tariffs, of course, that could be a really bad thing. It could be that, someone is saying, oh, we actually went into war. They actually turn off the cloud in some way. That could be really dangerous, of course, as well. It could be the Cloud Act thing, and people actually access your data or even try to steal your IP. And there's a number of things that could happen here, if we don't handle sovereignty properly. But okay, so what's your recommendation, I guess, in the end? And what should we do if you were to be more of a policymaker here, trying to guide how public sector should operate? Of course, using Intric is given, but besides that, where do you think the proper way to manage sovereignty should be?
To manage sovereignty? I think that in general, I speak for all of Europe first, in that I think it's a bad pattern if one thing that could happen is like a scenario. I spoke to the head of the army like a week ago, and he said that one thing that happened in Ukraine is that, when there was political pressure, they turned off Starlink and they start to lose the war, not explicit those words, but like that is when you're dependent on one person or one organization for thing that can move the needles of nations. That is, I think, a bad pattern. So I think organizations...
But you can also flip it and say that, the one thing Ukraine did when that war broke out was turn to the cloud.
Yeah.
And the first thing the Russian did was trying to, to bomb all the data centers that they had on-prem. Yeah. So the on-prem was completely insecure, right? There's no way to have the robustness.
No, exactly. So my point is not like go on-prem, definitely not, but more like about how many points of failures you have. So you should try to have not so many single points of failure. So that's also like, I have a amateur interest in aviation, and you should say that you should minimize the amount of single point of failures. Yes. And so with the sense of sovereignty, like you have to take it to, you can't take it to the extreme, because if you take it to the extreme and say we should have no external vendors, then you will have the most inefficient / dysfunctional organization ever. So you need to find the balance there. And the balance depends on how big you are as an organization, what capabilities you have, what teams you have, but also the amount of services that you provide. So if you provide the diverse set of services and you don't have technical people, of course you need to buy a lot of things.
But I think there's also something here about to sharply invest smartly in this layered cake of sovereignty. If you think about real control, right? Geopolitical view, it starts with control of energy. if you don't have energy, and then it goes to the chips, semiconductors, and then it goes to the infra hardware, and then it goes to the operating systems. And somewhere here we have LLMs, like foundational models, and then and then we have the data, our data and control of our data, and then we have whatever we can build in application layers in our local models and stuff like that. So isn't it also to think very, very carefully how and where we put our money to keep maximum control, and where basically we work smartly with other technologies? I mean, like an example, you can in some ways, when you build your own software, in the process of using software, you can have in your dev environment, I'm using Claude Code, I'm using American tools, blah, 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 blah. But when I run and compile my code, I take that home, that's in control. I put that in in a Swedish data center. Yeah. So were you completely sovereign? No. Were you sovereign where it mattered? Yeah. Most likely, right? Yeah. So you see what I mean? So we don't have the investment capacity to be sovereign across the whole cake. I think that's fundamentally impossible.
Yeah. But I think that humanity, like, we should strive to collaborate, and we should use tools that we build in other parts of the world. So like if I speak to them, like, humanity, the human side of me wants to say that sovereignty shouldn't be an issue, because we as humans should collaborate. And that is what has made us like a thriving species, is that we can have narrow professions and we can use currency to trade goods and services with one another. So like on a fundamental level, we shouldn't have to care about it.
Sovereignty is tricky.
It's very tricky. Yeah.
Agency is better. And like to have have autonomy and agency to each other. But okay, but maybe there's some places where you want to be really, really sovereign.
Yes.
But where? What is your view on? Is it data sovereignty that is the most important? Well, is model sovereignty important? Even
no, I think what we should focus on mainly is thinking how we can scale value in Sweden and in Europe. Yeah. And then you have to weigh the risks of not using the greatest functionality versus what the real risks of sovereignty could mean.
Yeah.
In most cases, I think it's worse to not be able to use AI than being afraid about potential abuses of sovereignty reasons.
Yeah.
So I'm actually rather strongly in favor of being able to build and stand on the shoulders of the giants and actually form partnership like with Intric and other companies, and avoid building stuff yourself. Yeah. So that I think is something that so many companies does wrong.
And what you're saying now, innovation speed matters most in some ways. I mean, like, so to be able to innovate with speed and collaborate then.
I'm going to focus on the core functionality of the organization. Do not build a new data platform. It's stupid, sorry, which everyone is trying to do. Do not build a new RAG system. That's what everyone is trying to do. It's stupid. We have great partners and functionality that they should use. So I think that's the important point, I guess.
I agree. I like it.
But continuing that, and of course we have different model providers that you have to use an Intric and that all the organizations have to choose by. And then we know the best one is coming from US, but then you want potentially to reduce that kind of dependency. And then it comes to what we have in Europe and not least in China as well. What's your thinking about how the performance and the if we should use or not the European and Chinese models compared to American ones?
So, I mean, first of all, the standpoint we have at Intric is that we want to be totally transparent, and we don't want to weigh in on what models to use to a large degree. So we want to just enable anyone to use what they see fit. And some organizations where it's hard to speak about different models when it comes to without bringing up like ethics and so on. I mean, I think it's pretty common knowledge now that some of the Chinese models have been purposefully altered to forget certain historical events and therefore like produce infactual responses. And so therefore it causes a lot of ethical concerns, but you can also raise ethical concerns about American actions. And our standpoint as a provider is that we're not going to weigh in on the ethics. We're just going to let the organizations figure that out. We just want to build the best platform. And for one organization, the best platform can mean screw the ethics. We need an open source model that performs at the top of the benchmarks, and then they should do that. And some organizations might end up in the news even if they use an air-gapped version of a Chinese model, because the Chinese model could leak data, that. So we don't weigh in on that. So
that's a really good thing from an Intric point of view. But if you then think of a public sector point of view, and of course, still, what would you recommend public sectors to do? Do you think it's a good idea to start using open source ones or closed models? Or
So now you're actually asking me to weigh in on it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I feel like I have to do it then. I think that
You don't have to. You really don't have to.
I think I will refer to a statement like this. I think that leaders should try to be brave. Like this is what Sweden needs. We need brave leaders, and every leader needs to assess their own organization and figure out what brave means to them, because that's what I think is really like that makes for prosperous, long-term, good things for our nation. So we need more brave leaders. That's all I can say.
Brave can mean many things. But if we just elaborate a bit, and of course you mentioned that Chinese models as well as American one and potentially European can be biased in different ways. They can choose to phrase their values in different ways, and of course we know that to be true can also be like cybersecurity potentials or risks that if for example Chinese models were to be biased towards not protecting when using AI for code generation, certain type of security holes could be potential risk, and so forth. But then what should we really do here if you take the other approach? If we forget these kind of things, the biased thing and the security risks thing, I mean they do exist, but we can also say that from an ethical point of view, we know that the Chinese model, for example, has been distilling from the American one. So we had a big report from Anthropic saying 24,000 accounts, fake accounts was created to, as soon as they released Opus 4.7, they just hammered it. And then they come with a new amazing Kinney model and Minimax model and DeepSec model. Oh, it's working so well. Well, no shit. They're distilling from the American ones. And, that's still good for European reasons if you just want to have a cheap one, right? And you don't care about the ethics. You just say, I just want a well-working model that is, I don't care why it's working. It's as long as it's cheap and well-working, then that could be okay. I'm not really sure what the question is here. I guess the question is, should we have the ethics here to choose or avoid choosing models that is built unethically? Yeah.
So I think there's probably a theorem for this. I think that my view on it is, I think you should take a what's it called, utilitarian perspective on it. I think that's a framework to reason about it. Like I think it would be unethical if a certain model that is like -1 on the ethics scale, if you use that, it could give you +5 on the good ethics side. Like for example, like can you give better health care? Could you save 100 babies if you just use a slightly unbiased model? I think it would be like you would want to save 100 babies. Do you get what I mean? So you should try to make those assessments. It's about how much better of service can we provide humanity versus how unethical is it. I'm really bad at these kind of subjects, but this is the framework I would use to reason about it. And of course, if you sit at a government agency or a big company, then it's an impossible KPI to answer, like how many babies are we saving in that sense. But that's how I would reason about it.
Well said, I think. And I think we have said so many times, people have been asking not which models you use, but if we should AI or not. And then phrasing the question, if we use it in healthcare, and if we use AI, we save this many lives, and if we don't use it, we kill that many people. Then I think that could be a well-working type of reasoning.
It's the utilitarian reasoning also about how ethical. So it's like how perfect should you be? Like because nothing is perfect, right?
Then the risk of non-action is something that people should consider much, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think
because the non-action is not ethical either.
No,
I mean,
That's
it
the
depends
whole
on what you're not acting on, but I think especially in terms of running our country, improving our country, I think we have a history of inaction, and it's a pattern of passiveness has been more prevalent. So I think that we need to lean into action. That it's not a very crisp statement, but I think that's where bold leadership comes in.
But I would like to sort of sum up now, a little bit wrapping up also. We had a theme here. How do we innovate and navigate innovation with AI, as AI innovation in public sector or in general? And now we're coming to sort of the, core complications here we have explored together with you, that we sort of sovereignty and all that, cloud, all that. I would like to think about now, what do we think is the biggest blockers or hurdles or things that we would like to sort of see change to increase the speed of innovation, do more, and let's start with public sector, but I bet you it's similar types of things we need to fix in enterprise as well. But if you take a step back and sort of lessons learned, and where are the things that sort of makes us muddle through or makes it go slower, or...
Yeah. Yeah, I think
what would really help? What would make a difference?
I think that communication. If I speak for Sweden's perspective, I think communication. Might be a bit unorthodox, but I think communications. If organizations communicated a little bit more what they did and how they did it, I think that would help others adopt as well. Because taking the public sector, it's. So, like I said before, the most exciting things that people do with our platform, we can't speak about, and they won't speak about it either for probably years and years. And that creates that in combination with a pattern of like, we're going to look around and see what everybody else is doing before we do something. That creates a environment of inaction where, although underneath the surface, you have a couple of key players who are really pushing boundaries, but they don't speak about it. So that means that a lot of organizations are just looking around and saying nobody's doing anything, and until years go by, and some organizations have been really transformed. Like we have some municipalities saving millions in comparing invoices versus contracts, and that doesn't really get out. And I think that is a pity for other municipalities or other organizations, because so that I would like to change. I would like the nature or the approach to around communication to change. That is much more needed than any like legal perspective change or technological shift.
But let me try. At the Data Innovation Summit a couple of weeks back, there was a couple of key themes that was coming back in relation, and it was quite interesting because it was very much we got more into how we practically put AI and agents and safely into enterprise environments. So the whole dimension with context, the whole much more mature view on organization and agency. How do you actually install this? So if we go into practicalities like the way we have organized funding, the way we have business people in one end and IT people in the other end, the way we have sort of not really an innovation steering in place. We have normal business or verksamhetsstyrning, innovationsstyrning. So are we really geared to really absorb innovation? Is the funding model and is the organization geared for this? So when you say we want to have horizontal people, does that mean a huge committee from people who sees completely different and have no clue about each other? Isn't that indicating, hint, are we organized in the right way for this?
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations are. They just don't know it yet. Like you have digitalization offices like CDOs and so on, but many people maybe take the approach of not forming these horizontal layers or forming these groups because they say that we need to figure out compliance first, or we need to build a data lake first, or like a data layer, data platform, whatever you think you need to do with your data first, you don't need to do it. You can grab really easy wins that saves you hundreds of thousands every month on a small team by just simple RAG stuff. And you should get those claims next month, not when you have tagged up your metadata with consultants next year for millions. That is, I think the organization structure is in place. We started with digitalization when the internet came about, so that exists, and just those people need to work.
But they are. I think you're telling them to do work that is outside the fundamental operating model.
Not really. They are supposed to digitalize their organizations.
Yeah,
and
but
AI is a digital
do they
thing.
follow fundamental product steering approaches? Are they really funded according to product and product operating model? I mean, like, these are the fundamentals that this guy's been doing for years in Spotify. He doesn't even recognize the problem until he works in a different place where you have run spend and project spend, and you have a line organization, this and that. And where the fundamental steering model, funding model, is not product in the same sense. So it becomes really hard to innovate then, because whatever innovation you do, you kind of need to treat as a product. So those kind of things, I don't think public sector has. I mean, like, in some places, maybe like Skatteverket and different places, they have this because they have a DevOps environment. Do you know what I'm talking about, Anders? Because I'm trying to reflect back to enterprise view. I think product steering as a quite important view of innovation here. And those things, I'm not so sure we have that in the municipality. And that is making it a little bit trickier to muddle through. I don't know.
Well, I mean, way of working, of course, I think is a super important point. Now we're moving a bit, away perhaps from the topic, but still, yes. I mean, if we take the technology that AI can help with, is great. And if you have RAG solutions or you have AI that can help with managing knowledge and data in different ways, that's great. But even if you have that, a big problem that a lot of organizations have is that they don't have efficient enough, way of working.
Exactly.
If we take, what Tesla, for example, is doing, and I've been, looking and working at Spotify, and the Spotify model, of course, they have a great way to do it. The big tech giants, the Google, Microsoft, and Amazons have a great way of doing it. But when I started to look into how Tesla is doing it, I was shocked, right?
Tell me more.
Yes, we can do that. But I'd just like to say that, to your question, then, if you think about, enterprises and perhaps even more so public sector, there is a lot of things you need to do besides providing the tech, which is related to the way you're working.
Yes, that's my point.
And I think, I wish this should be a science topic. This should be something that is taught in school. This KTH should do this.
This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm trying to put up as an engineering topic, equally to data science and data engineering. So I fully agree with you.
Yeah.
And there are patterns. And I don't think those patterns is really understood in enterprise, and even less in public sector. And this is also what, hearing, on Data Innovation Summit, people are so excited, blah, blah, blah. And then you have a whole stage on the Friday for public sector. And the main topic is more or less, as the general perception of a public servant or engineer working somewhere who maybe has not worked with you.
I mean, just to give an example of this, in public sector, they usually blame and say that, I know the tech companies are doing this. I know the startups can move fast, but they don't have what we have. We have strict security requirements. We are working with humans in this and that way, and we cannot work like a startup.
That's bullshit.
That is actually bullshit.
Yes, absolute bullshit.
And just an example, if you take Tesla then, if you take SpaceX, for example, if you take like rocket science, literally building a Starship rocket, which is launching today, the V3 version, cool. I'm waiting for that. They are working in a super, super regulated environment.
Exactly.
They are working with hardware development, not just software. They are, working with oversight committees, other, government agencies that has to approve what they're doing to put rockets in space and still manage to do it in an agile way. And I wish, people understood how it is possible and don't use excuses like, well, we can't operate like a startup or like whatnot. It is possible.
Yeah.
But that's where the brave leadership comes in.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, but brave is not enough, right? Because I mean, like Helena Hörnebrand was onto this. Like, it's a different view of what is enterprise when you're continuously innovating, and it becomes something else in terms of how you set up steering an organization. So it's down to the point of how we have with the command and control structure for hundreds of years, from university to how we educate people in schools to be cogs in the machinery, doing their work, actually not taking decisions, not taking action, but rather being part of a process, right? And now when we are getting to this perspective with AI, and even you're going to build your own AI, so you're going to have an assistant, you're going to delegate, you're going to steer. So this whole thing of how to think and act like that and have the agency to do that, that's what Elon Musk is giving out in a completely different way, right? And
then it's a lot of stuff, just to do the disclaimer, it's a lot of stuff that Elon is doing that is not something we should copy.
No, but it's
I just put it out there.
This is not an analysis of Elon Musk. It's an analysis of ways of working in very large organizations who apparently moves with speed in some of the most highly regulated markets you can have. Automotive and rocket. Sorry, back to you.
No, but if we move into Intric here, and you mentioned your mission was elevating human species, right? And then, of course, also you mentioned about AGI, and we will continue to, improve AI, of course. And do you have a date in mind when AGI potentially will happen? Or?
It was quite a few months ago since I thought about that, to be honest. That's sad in itself. But I don't think I am. I don't think I'm in a position to I haven't trained an LLM in years. I'm not.
Wait. Your opening statement was that you're going to build AGI. So tell us.
But I will tell you the plan to do it. I can tell you the plan to do it and the time scale. So with Intric, we're building these assistants, right? That is basically allows you to augment or improve human work, right? So the hypothesis is just that at some point, the system, AGI is something that can do any tasks as equal to or better than a human, right? So at some point, to me, language models can now reason, and they can semi-reason, yeah, sure. But you can, let's say like this, the trajectory of their ability to reason is upwards.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
And provided enough time, that upwards will at some point become that of a human brain. And then it's just a question of the amount of interfaces that you can connect to an LLM, if we still call it that at that point, or if it's some multimodal thing. But so that we will just follow along this journey and connect more and more stuff to things in Intric until we sit there at a point and say, holy shit, we got AGI. And that's not very crisp plan, but it is a plan, and it's much more cost efficient than burning money on compute and letting someone else do that compute. But I will say this, I think that in 5 years, it's very likely that we will sit and we say, holy shit, we have AGI. Because we don't have the visual input as much. We haven't solved that, the moving video, but we have images, we have images and LLMs now. That has just happened. I think over the past year and a half, it just happened, and the world barely paid attention. But we just need moving videos, and unless Jan LeCun is really right, then we just need moving video into LLMs, and then we have it, right? So we'll see how it gets made, but that is.
What do you think about Jan LeCun, by the way? Is he right or wrong? I think he's wrong. So I think, it's like a philosophical question at this point. How do you define intelligence? I think you land in a philosophical question. But do you think the current transformer or the GPT decoder version of the transformer is the architecture that will stick when we have AGI?
I would have to, then I can say no. Because if you define any task as going beyond text, then of course you probably need other things. And then I will say, you could argue that if you just output things that control other modalities, you could say that we still have that architecture. And in a sense, I could say also yes, but it depends on a little bit where you draw the boundaries of the system, I think. So in a way, it's a vague answer.
I mean, I think, when someone tried to reverse engineer Mythos, the not released model from Anthropic that created all these cybersecurity problems or possibilities.
Yeah.
But they, in the reverse, it's called Open Mythos if someone wants to Google this. But then what they did in the reversed version was basically they had a forward pass that they normally have through the transformer decoder. But then in the middle of it, they basically do a loop. So they 16 times just loop through the latent or the middle of the layers inside the forward pass.
Okay.
Meaning basically it does latent space reasoning.
Okay.
Meaning it doesn't output a token and then send that token back and do reasoning in token space. It actually does reasoning because it loops inside the model before it produces a token. So that means it actually do latent space reasoning, which is what Jan LeCun wants to do.
Yeah.
Jan LeCun doesn't want to remove transformers, right? Or what's your view of what Jan LeCun's vision is?
Yeah, that's good. We need to land in that first. So my view of what he wants to do is basically he's saying like text is not enough. We need to take video into account as well to build a world model. So that I don't infer any like neural network architecture in his statements there. But maybe that's a follow-on fact.
But we have, we have Karim Noura on the pod. 6 superintelligence, a Swedish startup who basically thinks you cannot get to real world intelligence from language. That's the logic. That's the fundamental logic that you can find that there is some sort of logic on intelligence that is related to language, but real physical intelligence to learn how to stand up or walk or stuff like that, even robots. That it's a different type of learning that you need to do trial and error. So rather than starting from the language paradigm, start from the paradigm of moving boxes and building a robot arm, completely deep learning and learning like a child walking. So it's an argument that there is a fundamental, not the language paradigm that takes us to that the language is language intelligence. Actually, maybe not. That's another argument.
Data is one. What data is used for training? It could be language only, but probably that's not sufficient, and you need something more. At least images, video, audio, and perhaps more. But the other thing is really the architecture as well. And what Jan LeCun is saying then is they want to have the JEPA, the Joint Embedding Predicting Architecture, which means that it should embed into a joint embedding latent space and then do the reasoning there. So today we have the GPT that is actually always producing one token at a time, and you have next token prediction happening, which is, in my view, really inefficient and actually not what's happening. If you take any kind of image generated today, all of them basically have an autoencoder around the pixels, so that it's not really, reasoning in pixel space. They first autoencode it into a latent space, and then they do the diffusion transformer inside of that. So already we are seeing more and more things moving towards some kind of latent space reasoning happening. So I don't think there's a question that the direction of what the JEPA and Jan LeCun is saying is happening already. And Mythos is potentially another example of that. And there's a lot of papers moving in this direction. Then, if autoregressiveness is bad completely, that's another question. If reinforcement learning is bad or good, it's another question. But in any case, I think in a lot of ways, the direction he has been saying has been already happening.
Yeah, and I'm super glad he's pursuing it, because for a lot of years he was just complaining about LLMs, and he was also funding them at the same time or like progressing it. So I think I'm super excited to see where it goes, right?
But let's use Intric as a view on the philosophical view on AGI.
Okay.
Because your statement was, let them figure out the underlying models.
Yeah.
And what we are doing, we're building the right harnesses, scaffoldings, context all around. And all of a sudden, holy shit, we will reach AGI. So this to me also says something about architecture. It says something about what is AGI is some sort of AI compound system. You know, if we can get all that inside the LLM, or if this is actually an architecture between what is the world model, what is the perception space, what is the harness space, blah, 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 whatever I don't know. So I don't see it as an LLM topic of an LLM reaching AGI. I see it as some sort of architecture as an AI compound system reaching AGI. What do you think about that? And I think that's what you're telling me when you're saying.
Yeah, but that's partly what Jeppe is saying as well. So it's not a single model doing everything.
No.
It's one doing perception. It's another one having the world model, which basically is trying to understand, is this good or bad?
Yeah.
If you make a certain prediction. And there is something, a memory model, meaning both for long-term and short-term memory. So you have a set of modules basically operating together. And I think also that is basically what OpenClaw is moving towards.
Yeah.
So it's adding memory by simply having markdown files here and being updated and changed, and a soul file and whatnot. So we are starting to see that it's actually the surrounding logic, harness, and I hate the term scaffolding or wrapper. Yeah. That's not really...
It's cheap, right? I believe it's AI compound system was Berkeley AI Research launched a couple of years back. Ali Godse was part of writing an article on that. It's trying to sell Databricks, of course. But the whole point was really, if you think about it, I mean, like if I squint, what you're doing with Intric, you're providing a platform in order for people to put in the right long-term memory, short-term memory, call it whatever you want. When you build a RAG, you give it context, you give it information, you give it policy, you give it all these things that allows it to then act in the real world, which you can't really find in the generic AGI LLM because it doesn't have the eval criteria that fits for that purpose. So you need to be able to work with those things. You see what I mean? So in my opinion, what you're doing is you're creating a platform that allows people to get to an AI compound system without being super engineers.
Yeah, I think that's a super fair way to put it. I mean, if you compare what a super powerful LLM or other type of neural network can do, I mean, it's still some person in organizations. You still have process, you still have customers or citizens to serve, and we will fill the gap between this super powerful thing and the job that needs to be done. Exactly. And there will always be people making sure that gap is filled. It's just a question of what do you fill it with.
Yeah.
I'm moving to that, and now the time is flying away a bit here. But if we move a bit more philosophically and thinking, you know, as the journey towards AGI happens, then we can see at least if we take AI for coding, for example, we can see that, you know, today people are writing less and less lines of code, but they are instead directing agents that are then, you know, doing a lot of the work. But humans are still in the loop, right, all the time. There's no question that we have humans then just moving up in some way in the abstraction pyramid or levels, and then directing a set of agents. How do you see humans, as we move closer and closer to AGI, being part of that? Or do you think when AGI happens, humans actually will move out of that loop?
I think going back to my pattern of like, the thought pattern is like analyze how technological shifts have happened in the past. That's the framework I draw upon. And I think any tech abstraction that has come, or like, civilization abstraction, has not led to people working less, sadly. I mean, it's sad, but it's the conclusion. It's the how it has always been. So I think that I would really like that AGI leads to UBI, like some sort of universal basic income, where everyone can lay on the beach.
I don't call it universal high income.
Oh yeah, that would be great. But I think there's certain tendencies of us that's what makes us human. Like we are hunters and we are gatherers. That's what made us the apex predator, right? So we will always, as a species, want more. And so even if we have UBI or UHI or whatever, you will always look at the neighbor and be like, man, if I just did something else, I could have one more of what he has. And then you will end up with work again.
But I mean, it's, you know, I get often a question, you know, will you even work as a software engineer anymore? And for me, you know, if you compare just 5 years ago or something, when I programmed then, I could do this much. Today I can do 10 times more, if not even more than that. Does that mean that I work 10 times less with engineering? No. It's the opposite, actually. I work more with engineering because I can do so much more, and it's actually so much more fun.
Are you guiding a whole engineering team? Literally.
Yes.
If you look at
the point is, I spend more time.
I agree. I mean, it's the same pattern, I think, in all people who want to achieve more. When you get a lever, you pull harder, right? Like Jonathan, my co-founder, like he starts his day with writing like 3 instructions on the bus, and then when he walks to the office, he has 3 PRs ready. So there's more. Like you work more.
It's a Jevons paradox.
This is Jevons paradox, and I'm not sure everybody knows about Jevons paradox, but it's in summary, when something gets drastically cheaper to produce, and so it lowers the threshold, so what you can utilize that technology for, and therefore you put it into more things. And so this is one. Another thing that was sort of, I think, a way of looking at this is that we have been part of a sort of the industrial revolution of a sort of the assembly line view of work, the scientific management, command and control, Tayloristic management. We are cogs in a machine, right? And obviously right now, those cogs are the things that the AI most likely can do better. So I said on the keynote, we need to stop driving change and live in the machine room and start living on the bridge. It's like the machine, it's just the machine that sits in a vessel, and you need to steer the vessel, you need to guide the vessel, you need to operate the vessel. So it's the machine room, the machine metaphor of an organization shifts to the vessel of opportunity, moving ahead. And then there is a new breed of work that is defined based on a vessel and a bridge metaphor rather than the machine room metaphor that has been prevalent for the last 100 years. So I think a lot of work and the way we look at process and the way we look at task fundamentally shifts because we don't need to be in the machine room in the same sense. We shouldn't. It's now clocking in at a different speed. It's same as abstraction level, but it's a different metaphor to show it's not simply going up doing the same thing. It's taking a different role. What do you think? The fundamental of work and what is work, what is human work is changing that. Steer, guide, judge, set criteria.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you can do more with less. I mean, that is the essence. Or you can shift your mind in like more cognitively heavy work. You don't have to information gather as much, or you don't have to, but it leads to that you have to like fact check a bit more maybe. But I think we will get past that as well.
But if we think in the limit here, and think that, okay, imagine now we have passed AGI. Imagine that we have AI that is 1,000 times more efficient in memorizing things and in working with a lot of data, in reasoning, in actually taking actions properly, which is really bad at today. But imagine it can, and can do that 1,000 times better than any human. Should we then remove the human from the loop, so to speak? I can think some cases absolutely yes, like driving a car. Why should a human do that if an AI can do it 1,000 times better? It just will be so much more dangerous to have a human driving it. But perhaps not everywhere. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think, in some cases we should leave humans in the loop? Or what's your thinking here?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's very hard to answer that question in a binary sense, but absolutely there are processes where the human should be kept, for sure. I mean, not only from the compliance perspective where it is actually binary, but also like philosophically, but I think that what will happen is that the boundary will shift. Like no one is asking now, why are you converting your Java to like a binary? No one is asking why you're doing. I mean, that was never maybe done manually, but you know what I mean. Like no one is lower levels of abstraction. No one is questioning that. So
that can be automated without humans in a loop.
Yeah,
no problem.
So it will just be the boundaries will just the abstraction will go up, and but I think but there's certain things that I think where you will always question, should we really go away from that? But I can't really possibly, like, you would have to be, I think, a philosopher or ethics expert to say really like how will we progress in this dialogue. But I think it's like it's not a question for a company or an organization, but it's a question for society. It's like a societal debate, like where do we want to be involved? So that is something we have to like decide together.
Yeah, I mean, I can see if you take healthcare or something as an example, and at some point you may need to make a decision, as humans have to do today. Should this human be, given help or not, or how should we? If we have only this amount of resources and we have to prioritize and say, now we have to help that person, we can't even help that one. Making these kind of decisions, perhaps there are examples like this where.
Yeah, I mean, we have agreed, there are frameworks where we have agreed, and I think we'll reach consensus. Like in medical, you have the quality concept where it's like, if it costs this much, if you're this old and it costs this much, then it's not worth it. The doctors have these frameworks. Yeah. So I think they will be developed in other areas as well. Yeah. And we as a society just have to agree.
Oh, difficult questions. I was going to launch into it, but
you have medical persons as well.
No, I mean, like, so I think some of these topics is also about rethinking where is the judgment needed, So there's the other argument, like when to build something, the cost is zero, right? Literally, throw away compute, throw away apps. Then the core question is not if you should build, but what you should build. Yeah. And maybe those kind of questions then becomes more thinking about shaping society. Yeah. What should you build and what should not be built? Yeah. And maybe those kind of questions then are the real questions that we need to own up to create the society that works for humankind, sort of thing. So we should not build that stuff, even it's completely doable, because it doesn't, from the human society perspective, what am I for? What is AI for? What is AI working for? And I think those kind of topics, they look like super big topics, but if you think about it, if we don't live in the machine room, but rather on the bridge, those kind of decisions are the micro decisions we are doing without thinking, even in the lowest job. Should I clean? Should I take away that flower or that flower? I'm trying to put it in the context of a very pragmatic work. So there's decision making or the judgment making in every single job. Even the judgment of what do I put on when I go to work, the judgment, what do I put on when it's cold outside, the judgment, do I walk over the street when it's ice, whatever. So what I'm saying is that those things around judgment, should this be done or not, what is the evaluation criteria on this task, those are maybe the core things that we will be very preoccupied with as a species and in every kinds of jobs, rather than doing the actual doing.
Yeah, perhaps that's a good future. Who knows?
I like that future because it tells us humans were never meant to be cogs. Humans were meant for cognition, for reasoning, for argumentation, for discourse, and for creativity and for argument. Yeah. And what is then the jobs around that? And I think that's beautiful.
Maybe.
No, I agree.
Daniel, when Intric has built AGI, what do you think will happen? And we can think about this in two extremes, thinking in the limit here again. One extreme would be that machines will kill us all. It will be the Terminator, the Matrix of the future, and rather horrific, dystopic future. Or we can think the other extreme, the other limit, which is basically that AI helps us cure cancer. It helps us to fight the climate crisis that we're having, and we have basically no energy, needs at all, or basically the supply is infinite, and we basically have a world of abundance where cost of products and services goes to zero. Where do you think we will end up?
Yeah, it depends on if we solve the alignment problem or not, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we will solve it, and I mean, you have to believe in good, right? I think it's a very depressive world if you don't believe in good. I think we as a species, we've come super far. We've had a few turns, we've had a few points where, it was close, and we've shown that we as a species can handle other potentially dangerous technology. Like we have nuclear technology that we have handled to sometimes not so well, but we've handled it.
Yeah.
And that is a worse technology because that has less upside, you could argue. And I think
used for good, really.
Yeah, I mean, you can use it to like power. You can have nuclear energy and so on. So you can, but you could. The downside is also so big. So I mean, you could argue. I would argue that AI has way higher upside. I think, and I think we will handle that well as well. I choose to believe in the good. I think the alignment problem is on the radar. I think there's funding allocated to the AI safety. There's some serious companies that are working only on this. Like, I mean, Ilya and like they're pushing hard on this. So I root for them, and I think we will solve it. So of course, it will be the good version.
Yeah, sounds great. David Wallén, thank you so much for coming to the AI After Work podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you here speaking about philosophy and so much more. And I really look forward to when Intric will fix AGI. That will be a day to celebrate for sure. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It was the pleasure was all mine.
Thank you, David.
Super nice.